What's going on, everybody? This is Super Mike 2164, and we're gonna go back into the history. Callie House. Gonna add just a little bit to it, not too much. We're gonna do our 10 pages of reading first, then we'll add something to that. All right. Try to share this right, guys. All right, we're going to get started. Peace out to everybody. Make sure you press the thumbs up button and go ahead and press the share, the like and share. Like and share. Go ahead and press the subscribe button. We're going to get started in just a second. And like I said, everybody needs to understand that we're just dealing with the history here. You know, shout out to BMT. We had a good panel discussion, which was actually a very good panel discussion that he had over there. And let's see. Sorry, just getting a couple things together. Hold on one second. I'm trying to share because I want to actually be able to share some of the pictures in this book with you guys. And this is why I'm trying to take a little time here to get this picture set up, right? I'm trying to get it to where I can see the pictures. Okay. I'm just trying to see the best way to do this so that way I can share the pictures with you guys. All right, I think this might be better. All right, this might be better. All right. I think I can do it. Let's see. Yeah. All right. All right. So this is Walter Vaughn. It's a white guy. We'll go to this picture first, guys. This is the picture that we're on. Let's see. Let's see. All right. Guess I should have had a lot of this stuff together earlier. But we're just chilling out, guys. Just wait one moment because I do want to get this one picture, which is the main picture that I have up front. Let's see. I think I got it now. We're getting it together. Let's see. Let's see. Does this work out? There it is. Was it still not showing that other one? That's so weird. This is so weird. There it is. All right, let's see. Yeah, y'all can see that. All right, guys. Sorry about that. Some of y'all didn't care anyway. All right, so this picture here is talking about actually, I think this one comes first. Switches right over to that one. Oh my God, it's so irritating. Oh my God, I'm trying to... Getting this stuff together. What's up, everybody? Might cut this first part off of this video, but because I do want to just show some of these pictures, because this book here has some good pictures in it. We're going to go over just a little bit more of the history. I had a conversation over there on BMT channel, and it just shows you how important it is to know, the background. People don't understand how important history is. It is how people identify themselves. It's how it feeds into your own self-esteem, to your group esteem. And when you have low group esteem, you got all this low self-esteem going on out here. It's no wonder why, Black folks, we have a hard time. Yeah, we got a hard time out here because a lot of times Black folks end up having a hard time because we have We got a lot of low self-esteem out here. I'm gonna do it this way. These brothers, they think it's okay to diss your own history. You know, every thought that's about them, their own selves, their own black people, it's all defined as a negative. Everything's defined as a negative, and that comes from taking your cues from white supremacists. But they will defend tooth and nail the image and likeness of the white folks. So that means that the job was done pretty good. And as far as indoctrination, there's a lot of indoctrination out here. And so this is one of the reasons why we got to go ahead and start really just going ahead and teaching our own selves, our own history. Let me do this here. All right, we'll start here. So this is Walter R. Vaughn. He's a former editor of the Omaha, Nebraska Daily Democrat, native of Selma, Alabama, and white Democrat who first proposed the idea of ex-slave pensions, wanting to indirectly increase the financial resources of whites in the South. He created a proposal that was patterned after the idea of the popular Union veterans pension of the period. So that's Walter Vaughn. So let's do it this way. So we'll start over from some of what we just read last time. Vaughn had persuaded his Nebraska congressman, the Republican William J. Connell, to introduce the legislation in 1890, establishing a formula later used by the ex-slave Mutual Relief Bounty and Pension Association. The measure called for providing for a pension of $15 per month and a bounty of $500 for each ex-slave 70 years or older. Those under 70 would receive $300 as a bounty and $12 per month until they reached the age of 70, when it would increase to $15. Those under 60 years old would receive a $100 bounty and $8 a month until they reached age 60. Those less than 50 years of age would receive $4 per month, and then at age 50 years would receive the $4 per month, and then at age 50, the $8 per month. Ex-slaves and such persons as may be charged by laws of consanguinity. And I did look up that word and I forgot what it was again. But I think it has something to do with lineage or where you were born. Consanguinity with the maintenance and support of the freedmen who are unable by reason of age or disease to maintain themselves, were eligible. Relatives who cared for freedmen could, upon providing satisfactory proof to the Secretary of the Interior, receive the pensions. Ex-slaves under the bill included only those freed by Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, by state constitutional amendment, or by any law, proclamation, decree, or device. The plan appeared uncomplicated, requiring only that a claimant had been enslaved. Under the law, any black person alive before 1861 was presumed to have been a slave in the South unless proof to the contrary was presented. And then this picture comes into play. Vong's explanation for his involvement in the issue did not impress House, which is Callie. He mixed concern for the freed people with disdain and economic opportunism, as he explained it, seeing groups of freed people in a tattered condition while on a trip through Mississippi in 1870. He had decided that the government should pension the ex-slaves, who he asserted had been well cared for until emancipation had left them in poverty stricken. But he wanted to help blacks primarily in order to revive the Southern economy. The ex-slaves would, through spending the pensions they receive, pass along the financial benefit to whites. By adding to the region's meager resources for business and industrial development, the money provided to ex-slaves would relieve the devastation of the South caused by the Civil War. Vong's regrets that he had been too young to serve in the Confederacy, even though he was a Northerner. He regretted that he was too young to serve in the Confederacy. His sadness over the Confederate defeat and his nostalgia for antebellum days were rejected by House. Like other reunionists, Vong saw how slavery as a benign institution. Vaughn saw slavery as a benign institution that had benefited African Americans. His pro-slavery sentiments may have been in accord with the reigning pro-Confederate ethos among the whites, North and South, but it devalued blacks. At the time, whites in both the North and South were engaged in a great reconciliation movement in which they emphasized brotherhood. They also redefined the causes of the Civil War as totally about saving the Union. They lamented that unfortunate destruction of the Southern way of life and left no place for a discussion of the war as focused on freedom and equality for Black Americans. Despite her misgivings about Vong's motive, House paid careful attention to Vong's detailed description of how he had gained support for ex-slave pension legislation. And until then, she had no idea how the lobbying process worked. Vong explained in detail how he wrote to luminaries asking for testimonial letters that he could publish in his newspaper and aid to organizing and lobbying. Those he solicited included Frederick Douglass, the most important African American human rights leader of his day, who had become increasingly disgusted with the public's fading memory of slavery and its impact on African Americans. So, yeah, Frederick Douglass was pissed. He wasn't really having it. He didn't like, you know, he didn't like how they would pretend like this didn't exist or this didn't affect Black people. He really wasn't with that. Initially, Douglass responded that he found the reparations idea impractical, but finally decided that the nation owed retribution to African Americans, for the nation had robbed him of the rewards of his labor during more than 200 years. Furthermore, Douglass continued, The promise of land had been broken. The Egyptian bondsman went out to the spoils of his master, and the Russian serf was provided with farming tools and 3 acres of land, which to begin life. But the Negro has neither spoils, implements, nor lands. And today he is practically a slave on the very plantation where he formerly was driven to toil under the lash. Douglas asserted that if land had been given as promised during the Civil War, and that's Field Order number 15, if land had been given as promised during the Civil War, the Negro would not today be on his knees as he is supplicating the old master class to give him leave to toil. In the absence of land, if a measure like the one proposed by Vaughan had been adopted earlier, untold misery might have been prevented. Callie House and the other African Americans had heard of how the African Americans in Congress were trying to obtain federal aid for education as compensation for slavery. They also knew that the same leaders demanded greater protection for the right to vote as a priority. House and other blacks understood that Vaughan did not why black newspapers, understood even though Vaughan did not, why black newspapers and 3 African American representatives still in Congress after Reconstruction refused to support the pension bill. Those leaders instead focused on education and voting rights. So the Congress back then, the black people in Congress at that time, they refused to support education and they refused to support the reparations or the pensions bill. They were focused on education and equal and voting rights. The congressmen were Republican Henry Cheatham of North Carolina, Thomas Miller of South Carolina, and John Mercer Langston of Virginia. Representative Cheatham was born in 1857, had lived in the big house where his mother worked as a house servant. He attended school and college and became a school principal and later recorder of deeds in Vance County. So I think I have a picture of him. This is Mercer. He's black, but he lived in the big house. He was high yellow. So he's described as a distinguished looking mulatto. He read law, ran successfully for Congress in 1888, and was reelected in 1890. While in Congress, he introduced a number of bills designed to help African Americans, including one to reimburse the depositors of the bankrupt Freedmen's Bank. They stole our money, but reimburse the depositors of the Freedmen Bank. But his major emphasis was on aid to black public schools. Miller, born in Farabeeville in 1849 to free Negro parents, could have passed for white but refused to do so. His parents paid for his education, and hold on a second. So Miller, he could have passed for white, but he refused to do so. Let me get a picture of Miller. That's the one on our left. He could have passed for white, but he refused to do so. His parents paid for his education, and he attended college and law school, admitted to practice in Beaufort. He became active in the Republican Party and won local offices, elected to Congress in a dispute decided by the House of Representatives in 1888. He lost the election in 1890. He returned home where he worked to establish South Carolina State College for Negroes and became its president. He too thought education and voting rights were the only routes for empowerment for African Americans. Langston, born in Louisa County, Virginia in 1829, was the son of Captain Ralph Quarles, a white plantation owner, and Lucy Langston, of both Indian and Negro descent. His white father educated and supported his African American children and arranged for a friend to take care of them after his death. Educated at Oberlin in Ohio, he became a lawyer, theologian, and active participant in anti-slavery societies. During the Civil War, he helped recruit soldiers and worked for the Freedmen's Bureau. He also ran the law department and became acting president of Howard University. He held 2 diplomatic posts to which the Republican administration appointed African Americans at the time, minister to Haiti and charge d'affaires to the Dominican Republic. In 1890, he won a contested election to the House of Representatives, but left the Congress in 1891. Langston, too, insisted that instead of pensions, see, they didn't go for the reparations, dummies, but they didn't know. Instead of pensions and bounties for ex-slaves, what we want is the means of obtaining knowledge and useful information, which will fit the rising generation for honorable and useful employment. See, they wanted jobs. Education and political rights were his priorities. These legislators also shared House's distrust of Vaughan's motives. They suspected that he and his cronies wanted to give a few dollars to blacks to spend quickly, consequently enriching Southern businesses, but not uplifting the African American community. They also did not believe the pension bill would pass, and that it instead distracted from the education and voting rights initiatives they had urged on the Republican Party to help African Americans. In 1890, the Republicans made 2 unsuccessful legislative efforts to gain their objectives. Senator Henry Blair of New Hampshire pushed an aid idea to public education bill that would indirectly help blacks gain an education. The same games that they was running then, they running now. Indirect help for black folks. Henry Blair of New Hampshire pushed an aid to public education bill that would indirectly help blacks to gain an education. First introduced in 1884, the bill provided federal assistance to public schools with the amount based on the number of illiterate persons in each state. States with segregated school systems would have apportion the money to black and white schools based on the proportion of illiterate in each race between the ages of 10 and 21. The bill would have given a shot in the arm to the inadequate black public school systems and provided a form of reparations not seen since the Freedmen's Bureau efforts. The bill passed in the Senate in 1884, 1886, and 1888, but failed each time in the House of Representatives. In 1890, the Senate refused to pass it again. Opponents argued that it would weaken private schools or that taking funds out of the federal treasury would support demands for a higher tariff. The other bill, introduced by Representative Henry Lodge, provided for federal supervision of elections. Supporters noted that each Congress spent 30 to 60 working days on contested elections and questions related to the black vote in the South as Republicans tried to overturn the election of Democrats. Sponsors of the Lodge bill thought they could pass it with President William Henry Harrison's support. The president more worried about cracking the solid South to obtain votes for the high tariff McKinley Bill of 1890 gave only lukewarm support to the Lodge Bill. In his first annual message on December 3rd, 1889, Harrison praised the Negro race generally, and especially soldiers, veterans, and other African Americans who had remained in the South despite deprivation of their rights. The Lodge Bill passed, and the Lodge Bill passed the House on a strict party line vote, but lost in the Senate after being held over until the next session to make way for a vote on the McKinley Tariff of 1890, which became law. The Blair Education Bill and the Lodge Elections Bill, although advocated by African American leaders, had also been rejected. Nevertheless, House was not dissuaded and from her interest in reparations. House understood that opposition to ex-slave pensions by African Americans in business and the professions and congressional representatives. However, more bothersome was the opposition of influential white reformers such as Albion Turgey, who usually joined social justice causes. Turgey, a Massachusetts lawyer, who had gone south to serve as a judge after the war, repeatedly expressed disgust with the national abandonment of the cause of justice for the freed people since Reconstruction. However, he thought the idea of pensions would draw even more attention away from the effort to protect the civil rights of blacks. In 1892, he published a pamphlet in which he argued, "The colored race does not demand reparation. Thank heaven for that. The colored race does not demand reparation. Thank heaven for that. Only justice and equality of civil privilege, political right, and economic opportunity properly guaranteed and secured for the future." So this judge, they thank heaven that we didn't demand reparations. So Isaiah Dickerson, a Rutherford County African American, hold on a second, let's do here. And he is part of the leader of the reparations movement. Isaiah Dickerson, a Rutherford County African American teacher and minister, had worked as a traveling agent for Vaughn. He left when they had a disagreement over management and the direction of Vaughn's organization. Dickerson, who prided himself on his appearance, was always nattily but plainly dressed in a dark suit and cravat. Dickerson told audiences he had been drawn to the reparations movement when he saw one morning in Memphis an old colored man being ordered by a policeman to leave a piece of meat that he had taken from a swill barrel back of the hotel. Dickerson then decided that the best way to help the old ex-slaves is to get some money in their pockets for Union military veterans and their survivors, he said. The pensions have increased so much since the war that anyone who's been any place near the army can get one for a lifetime. From where he stood, there is no reason why the old ex-slaves who worked from sunup to sundown, who worked unpaid all their lives, and then helped the Union digging ditches at the forts, washing the soldiers' clothes, cooking for them, and nursing the injured, deserve less. This was especially true, Dickerson felt, given the government's generosity to the white veterans. Dickerson told House that he thought the pension legislation could succeed. By 1897, Vaughn had moved to Kentucky, where he described himself as engaged in the business of building electric street railways and other enterprises. Vaughn's involvement in ex-slave pension organizing languished aside from supporting the introduction of legislation in connection with selling his pamphlet. He continued to express the view that caring for the ex-slaves had been a burden for the southern white people too long, especially since they had been deprived of their property without recompense. Not just Congressman Chitnam, Miller, and Langston, but House and other African Americans who heard Vaughn speak had been suspicious of his motives and leadership. Vaughn's talk on the wonderful days of moonlight and magnolias during slavery and his autocratic style of operation repelled them. So basically, they was looking at this white man Vaughn funny style because they knew there was a trick in his reparations talk, but they wanted the money. But they were smart enough to want to control the money. So in consultation with the Federal Pension Bureau, Vaughn decided to denounce anyone as a scam artist who promoted the idea if they did not work with him. In September 1897, he distributed a letter to newspapers explaining that he was the sole author of the congressional legislation. Vaughn also selected a black Nashville man, P.F. Hill, as a reliable, educated gentleman, a 53rd degree Mason, and head of several fraternal orders. Okay, so this is their bootlicks. This is their boule, 53rd degree Mason, and head of several fraternal orders to act as chief of the Vaughn ex-slave movement. Only Hill had Vaughn's approval and authority in the work. Meanwhile, Vaughn continued to schedule lectures and to use his contacts to ask legislators to introduce or support the bill in order to sell his pamphlet. So he was making money off his pamphlet. The local newspaper reported his visit to Nashville in the summer of 1897 at a meeting organized by Hill to, his anointed successor. The Nashville American reported that about 50 people had paid the admission fee of 25 cents each at St. Paul's African Methodist Episcopal Church after some people who refused to pay the fee had left. Despite problems and setbacks, the pension idea fascinated House. The information she gleaned from the pamphlet and talking to Dickerson reflected her own experience and that of her family and neighbors. Talk of pensions for ex-slave men and women reminded them of how even the black Civil War soldier who had become a hero among African Americans was ignored by whites. So our Civil War veterans were heroes among the black African Americans, but whites ignored them, and who wanted to forget the racial reasons for the war. Paul Laurence Dunbar, who wrote The Colored Soldier in 1896, reflected the views of African Americans that military service should guarantee the rights, at least of those who had served. They were good to stop a bullet and to front the fearful fray. They were citizens and soldiers when the rebellion raised its head, and traits that made them worthy, those virtues are not dead. House and other ex-slaves knew of the role of the black soldiers had played in the war and the difficulties they had in receiving the pension benefits that flowed freely to white veterans. The 1890 Pension Act has served the link between pensions and service-related injury. Any veteran who had honorably served 90 days in the military, even if never injured or non-combatant, could apply for a pension if he could find a physician to affirm his unfitness for manual labor. In fact, old age became the only legal requirement for a pension. In 1906, Congress changed the law to say so explicitly. After the turn of the century, Congress also raised the benefit level for veterans and dependents several times. By 1915, 93% of the surviving veterans as pensioners received what had become essentially an old age survivor's benefit. In addition, many veterans held federal jobs and collected a pension. Pension eligible veterans constituted a privileged group. Most Northern whites, the group included some 186,017 African Americans who had served in the Union forces, about 3/4 of whom came from the southern states. A significantly lower percentage of blacks received veterans' pensions than white veterans. Racial hostility among Pension Bureau officials blocked blacks' access to pensions. Northern blacks probably fared better than the Southern freedmen or their dependents, who often lacked documentary evidence of their service, their dates of birth, or their surnames. Widows of the men who had served in the ranks in Southern black regiments suffered most severely from this problem. Unable to provide their relationship or obtain service records for the deceased, they went without aid. For example, the widow Felicia Callowix spent years trying to obtain back pay and a pension for the service of her late husband, Andrew Calloway. He was a much publicized Louisiana Native Guard hero who died in 1863 leading a charge at Port Hudson. In 1871, destitute, she finally received a pension of $20 per month, 3 years before her death, October 19, 1874. Harriet Tubman, the Moses of her people, who had escaped from slavery herself and ushered others to freedom on the Underground Railroad, had served in the Union Army as a cook, nurse, scout, and spy, but received no pension despite years of petitioning and the aid of the Secretary of War and Union Army officers who had observed her contributions. In 1881, the government awarded her a widow's pension upon the death of her second husband, Nelson Davis, who had served in the Union Army during the Civil War. She received $8 a month until 1899 and then $20 a month until her death in 1913. The $20 Harriet Tubman received was less than the $25 provided by law. Now there's something for us, family. So they're mocking us when they say they want to put Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. I'm gonna read that again. And when they say they want to put Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill, that's a mockery because Harriet Tubman did not receive her pension and she was fighting for that pension. She was fighting for that $20 because she had served in the Union Army cooking, and they denied her a pension. And she eventually received a pension after the death of her second husband, Nelson Davis, who had served in the Union Army during the Civil War. She received $8 a month until 1899, and then she received $20 a month until her death in 1913. The $20 Harriet Tubman received was less than the $25 provided by law. So everybody else was receiving $25. They gave her $20. So to put Harriet Tubman on a $20 bill is a mockery. And for us not to know that shows that we didn't know our history. Wow. In 2003, the protests of grade school children who visited her former home at Auburn, New York, led to $11,750 congressional appropriations to make up the difference. However, Tubman's family has yet to receive a pension for her service. House and the people she knew experienced extremely low wages, hard work, illnesses, and disease in the days after slavery ended. But as the ex-slaves aged, their problems worsened. Families lacked resources for health care and had to scrape together money to pay for funerals. Neither land nor education as reparations for the poor freed people had been achieved by African American political leaders, and so to Callie House, pensions for ex-slave women and men seemed a worthy cause. And so I'm going to stop right there. We'll start back on chapter 2, but I want to also share this. Hold on a second, guys. Yeah, that was something else with Harriet Tubman. I didn't know that either. Hold on a second here. Oh man, maybe I don't have it up. Shoot. All right, so let's see here. Get this. Well, I had another article, but I think I'm going to chill out for now. But yeah, it just shows you how important it is to know our history. These people playing games with us, taking us through the same cycles, and defeating us the same way each time because we don't know the game, but they know the game. They make sure they know the history, so they always have an advantage over you. They always have an advantage over you because you don't put importance on your own history. You let all the wisdom, all the knowledge of your ancestors to just go away. And all the wisdom, all the knowledge of your ancestors goes away, but you you get to sit there looking stupid. Yeah. So there was a bill, HR 119, back then. Let's see if I got this here. I think we got it here. No, I'm not going to go through that. All right, so I'm going to end it off here right quick, guys. This is just the fourth installment. We'll start ramping this up to try to get through this book pretty quick. But right now, that's it.